Hi, Shelley. How many folks are we going to have present on the board tonight?
We're going to have 5.
Okay.
I've got to make a quick phone call. Apparently we have some folks who showed up at the Civic Center, thought we were in person.
Okay.
So I need to make a quick phone call and I'll be right back.
Okay.
Okay, Tom, I'm back.
Yes.
I think we have the board members here that are going to be here tonight. So if you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay. Do we need to wait at all to get the, I don't know what's happening with the folks. Are we moving them in or are they just?
I've got 2 on the side. I'll leave them there until we hear the first case. The 2 people that showed up at City Hall are here for the second variance case. So
Okay.
they're trying to run home real quick to get online.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I'll check on these 2 once we get done with the first one.
Okay. All right. So we have the board members. So I will call the Board of Adjustment and Appeals meeting to order. Ms. Work, if you could please take the roll.
Okay, Ms. Schmitz. Mr. Rieger.
Present.
Mr. Thompson.
Present.
Mr. Taylor.
Present.
Mr. Collins.
Present.
Mr. Friesen, Chair Finn.
Present. All right, so with 5 members present, 4 votes are required. And we'll get to the case procedure here in a second. I need an approval of minutes for January 11th. I need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve the minutes for January 11th, 2023.
Thank you.
I will
Right.
second.
Awesome. All right, so we'll do a voice vote. I believe we were all present, so we can all vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that passed. I need an approval for finding of fact. So first is case VAR 2022-005 for 3880 South Bannock Street. Again, I need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve case the findings of fact for case VAR 2022-005.
Perfect. I need a second.
I will second.
All right, so we'll do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Chairman, could you mark me as abstained on this vote as well as the previous, since I was not present?
Yes. Thank you for calling that out. All right, so perfect. So the second case, approval of finding of fact for case VAR 2022-007 3350 South Emerson Street. Mr. Collins will also abstain from this. I need a motion and a second.
Move to approve the findings of fact for case VAR 2022-007.
I need a second.
I will second.
Perfect. All in favor of approving the finding of fact, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, so that also passes.
Houston, we have a problem.
So case procedure. So there are, as I stated, 5-member presence. So 4 votes or 4 affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction began within 180 days of the variance's effective date. Procedure for the meeting is the case will be introduced and an overview will be given by staff. Applicant will present their request and reasons the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will also be able to address the board, and if needed, staff will address the board again. So the public hearing for case number VAR 2023-001. The applicant is Craig Demmon. I think I have that, or Demmon. Property is 1321 East Dartmouth Avenue. The variance is to encroach approximately 5 feet, 10 inches into the required 25-foot minimum front setback to add a proposed enclosed garage for property in the R1A zone district. We got the posting via email, publication and posting via email for the property. Staff, if you could please give us an overview.
Chilly,
Ryan,
swear me in.
you raise your right hand, Ryan, and I'll swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Ryan Daniel Herring. Good evening, board members. I'm one of the planner ones here. If we haven't had the chance to meet. So the applicant Craig Demmon is owner of 1321 East Dartmouth Avenue, and this subject property is 7,599 square feet. That's relevant because that makes it a small lot, 1-unit dwelling in the R1A. It's side setback of 5 and front of 25. The entire, I'm going to share my screen now, if we don't mind. I'd like to give you some visuals so it's not just me painting a wonderful picture with my words. All right. So the entire existing front elevation of this house sits within the 25-foot setback. That's denoted here by this dashed red line. However, the carport located on the east side of the house is where the face of the house is closest to that 25-foot setback line because of this kiltered arrangement of the principal structure relative to the front setback line. So you'll see on the side where the existing carport is where the building is closest to the front setback line. This arrangement is the impetus for the applicant requesting a variance of 5 foot 10 inches in the R1A setback for a proposed attached garage. So now by way of analysis. So first criterion is a unique physical condition such as size, shape, location, topography, and surroundings. The perpendicular orientation of this principal structure in relation to the front property line originates from a mid-century design trend. And that's observable not just on this block, but throughout the entire subdivision. So the next 8 properties to the east of the property in question all have a similar tilted orientation to their front property line. And as well as a characteristic of this subdivision, as you can see, are oddly shaped lots. Odd arrangements are pretty typical of this area. So there's design considerations to make to consider. So the second criterion is in the intent of the zone district. Now this variance will enable the applicant to enjoy the use of a garage, which is allowed by residential districts, and multiple properties on the block have achieved garages of a similar design. If granted, the variance would be essentially consistent with the intent of our dimensional standards of the zone district and not create a public health, safety, or welfare issue. The third criterion is that this will not permanently impair the use of or development of an adjacent conforming property. Now, the proposed garage would decrease the existing front setback encroachment by approximately 1 foot and 5 foot, and it will still maintain their side setback. The property arrangement of the garage is consistent with similar properties on the block, as I've stated. And the fourth criterion is that this is not a self-imposed hardship. And to reiterate, this is a design from another era that was popular in this subdivision, and is not a something that arises from a choice of the current property owner. So in sum, department recommendations to approve the variance for the stated above reasons. Any questions? And I have any other supporting documents if you want to go through those too.
Thank you. All right, board, any questions for staff? All right, I don't see that at this time we have any questions for staff. So, Mr. Herring, I'll ask you to stand by and we might come back to you. If the applicant could come forward and to testify in the case, and if you could state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
One correction to Ryan's statement.
Well, real quick,
actually,
hold on, Mr. Demmon, we need to get you sworn in first.
I'm sorry.
Yep. So if you could state your name and address, and she'll swear you in.
I'm actually the architect.
Oh, you're
not
the not the app,
property
but
owner.
Applicant, excuse me. Yeah, you're right.
so you, all right.
Hold on 1 second.
Yep.
We lost our speaker.
No,
Property.
So, yep. So that's
Property owner
fine.
is actually on the call sitting next to me. That's Dan.
Yeah,
Swear me in.
so Mr. Demmon, that's fine. We can hear from you, but you still need to get sworn in. So if you could state your name and address, and the secretary will give you the oath.
Craig Demmon, 999 Vallejo, number 1A. I'm sorry, Vallejo Street, 1A, Denver, 80204.
Okay, Mr. Demmon, if you raise your right hand, swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, now you can continue on and clarify.
All right. So I am actually the architect representing Dan Stramiello, whose computer laptop battery just ran out. So he left your call. but he is sitting next to me if need be. We'll bring him in
Okay.
screen. Not sure what you would like us to further add, other than, we are decreasing the existing front setback encroachment by a little over a foot, foot 2 inches. We are not adding to the side encroachment at all. The intent is to just build a single stall garage in the same period style of architecture. It's as simple as that. No, we do not have a signed statement from the adjacent neighbor, but they're willing to do that if needed. They don't have any opposition. We can certainly get that documentation if there is anybody that's opposed. And the other nice part about this is that these two houses are actually mirror images of each other, so the garages are adjacent to each other.
Okay. And this was just, we have the letter in the file that just states this was kind of the style momentarily to construct the house that's a little bit cockeyed.
Yeah, it definitely presents some challenges. I mean, there were only 700 and 800 square foot houses when they were originally built. Most of them had been, nearly all the neighborhood has been added onto, including this house. This house has already had a previous addition quite a long time ago.
Okay. Is there, do we have any questions for the applicant, Mr. Demmon, at this point?
I had a quick one. I know you mentioned that the adjacent house is built as almost a mirror image. Does that house currently have an attached garage as well, or is that a carport, or what's the situation on that one?
Do they have a, hold on one sec. It's a carport. Your neighbor has a carport, not a garage.
No,
Yep.
the neighbor doesn't have a car.
Yeah, hold on. For us to get his input, we're gonna have to get him sworn in.
Okay. You want to come over and get sworn in?
Shelley, there's no issue if we both just have him use the one video screen, is there?
No, it's fine. It's
Okay.
fine. I'll just swear him in real.
Perfect. Hi, yep, if you could just state your name and address and take the oath from the secretary and get sworn in.
Dan Stramiello, 1321 East Dartmouth Ave.
If you raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, what was the question again?
So the question was, I believe it was, does the mirror image house have a single car garage? Mr. Collins, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I noticed that they share a same driveway, so I was curious if they've got a similar encroachment, or a similar style and encroachment on that setback as well.
Yeah, I just didn't hear him. I'm sorry.
The question was, does the neighbor have a garage, and does the garage encroach on the setback?
The neighbor does not have a garage. He parks his car next to my carport.
And so it looks like, and I am looking at, there's a picture that is kind of an overhead picture, and it looks like, so these two houses are on the far left, and it looks like there are the two houses next over both have carports. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a mix. These houses were built in the early 50s. So in some houses, some lots, there are garages, some others, there were carports.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant or the architect, the applicant or the owner at this point from the board? All right, I don't see any other questions. Are there any people present, Shelley, that wish to speak in favor other than the architect and the owner for this?
I'll check real quick here.
Yeah, for or opposed, we can hit them both at the same time.
Okay. I've got a number ending in 216. Are you here to speak regarding this variance case? If you can unmute. (216). Are you here to speak regarding this variance case?
Well, now you've done it, Shelley. They've just
I know, I
left.
did it. I need to go down the line here. Jennifer, are you here regarding this variance case or the second case?
I apologize. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I am here for the second variant case on Corona Street.
Okay, we'll get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Christy McNeil. Are you here regarding this variance case or the second variance case?
I'm sorry, I'm also for Corona.
Okay, thank you. And I know Kelley Thompson is for the second case, and then we have our city attorney, and that looks like everybody so far.
Okay. All right. Does the board have any additional comments or questions that we would like the staff to address?
I do. Because the carport is open on all the sides, does it count as an encroachment currently?
It would count as an accessory structure. Carports are specifically called out as accessory structures in the code, yes.
Well, I know that like porches and there's other allowable encroachments on the front setback. And I was wondering if this counted as that currently.
No, carports and detached garages are actually on the same line in our chart.
Thanks.
All right, any other questions for staff? Any other questions for the applicant or the owner? All right, I don't see any other conversation or questions that we have. So the public hearing is now closed. For discussion, I need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve a variance for the property at 1321 East Dartmouth Avenue to encroach 5 feet and 10 inches into the required 25-foot minimum front setback for an enclosed garage. This is a variance to table 16-6-1.2.
I have a question. Well, we can vote on that and then. So is there a second?
Yeah.
I'll second.
All right, so we'll do a voice vote. All in favor. Actually, I don't need a voice vote because we got a motion. So I don't know if we want to do a friendly amendment to just make that 6 feet. It seems that 5 feet 10 inches, we could, I just don't want anything that seems to me like we're splitting hairs a little bit.
I'll accept your friendly amendment. Do we need to get the seconder to also do
Yep.
that?
Is there a second to amend that to 6 foot?
I'll second that as well.
Perfect. All right. So this we do need to vote on. We'll do a voice vote. All in favors of accepting the friendly amendment to 6 feet, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. So we're sitting at 6 feet. Discussion, thoughts.
I mean, again, looking at it, it makes sense. If looking at the kind of that whole neighborhood, it looks like almost every house is encroached, at least the majority have encroached at least some extent, or at least visually from a map appear to be at about that same level, via whether it's a carport or whether it's a garage or something similar, or just an expansion of the structures. So it looks like it fits the area.
It definitely looks like that physical condition exists with the orientation, even though it is somewhat common on in this specific area. It's definitely not common to this R1A. So it's definitely an odd situation that is just kind of what variances are for, I feel like.
Yep, I agree with both of those. I think this is a pretty straightforward. I think they meet the criteria. Any other discussion, or should we just plow ahead and vote? All right, I guess we will vote. Ms. Warwick?
Okay, Mr. Taylor,
I voted yes. The first criterion is met because of the unique physical conditions with the placement of the current structure on the lot, requiring this addition into the front setback. That second criterion is met, that the intent of the zone district is for homes to be able to have garages. The third criterion is met, that the variance will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent properties. It will not, as it is currently drawn. And then the fourth criterion is that the variance is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship, that this arrangement on the lot was not self-imposed.
Mr. Thompson,
I agree in regards to what Mr. Taylor had stated, sorry.
Mr. Rieger,
Voted yes for the reasons stated.
Mr. Collins,
I also voted yes for the reasons stated.
Chair Finn.
I also voted yes for the reasons stated.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right. So case number VAR 2023-001 is closed. The public hearing for case VAR 2023-002, the applicant is Kelley Thompson. The property is at 3021 South Corona Street. They're requesting a variance to encroach approximately 3 feet 4 inches into the required 5 foot minimum side setback, as well as encroach approximately 8 feet 8 inches into the required 25 foot minimum front setback, and encroach approximately 1 foot vertically into the required bulk plane to add a proposed second story addition for the property in the R1C zone district. Verification and posting was sent out. Staff, do we have the same? Who is, well, it doesn't matter, new case, so staff still has to get sworn in. So if staff could come forward, get sworn in.
I'm here.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, very good. My name is Brooke Bell. I'm a senior planner with the Community Development Department. And we're going to hear tonight, the case before the board tonight is VAR 2023-002. The applicant is Kelley Thompson at VAR2023-001 South Corona Street. And the request is to encroach 3 foot 4 inches into the required 5 foot setback, as well as 8 foot 8 inches into the required 25 foot front setback, and to encroach approximately 1 foot or less into the required bulk plane. So if you don't mind, I'm going to share my screen and get you oriented here, hopefully. There you go. So can everybody see that? Okay, very good. The property at 3021 South Corona Street is located between Cornell Avenue and Dartmouth Avenue in the 3000 block of South Corona Street, 1 block west of South Downing. That's in the northeastern portion of the city. It is zoned R1C, as are the surrounding properties. And it is 50 feet wide by 125 feet deep, which equals 6,250 square feet. And it is a 1 unit dwelling. I'm going to be flipping through some different slides here. This one, I'm showing it as kind of a vicinity map, but we'll talk about this in a moment. And you can see the highlighted orange property. But as you can see, this property happens to be located both in the 100-year floodplain and floodway of the Dry Gulch drainage way. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. The second slide is more of a close-up of the property. You can see South Corona Street. It's on the west side of the street. It's a 1-story existing single-family dwelling with a detached garage, and nothing that unordinary other than its location in the floodplain, as well as you'll see the existing setbacks in a moment. Here's a more detailed picture of the Dry Gulch floodway and floodplain, and this map is kind of at a 45-degree angle, but you can see the highlighted property, and the light blue portions are the 100-year floodplain, and then the black crosshatched areas within that is the floodway. In essence, anything located within the 100-year floodplain or floodway needs a floodplain development permit. But of more particular importance is being located in a floodway. You cannot raise the base flood elevation at all, 0, meaning it makes it very difficult, if not impossible, to expand a footprint of any kind of structure, be it a garage, a house. So it becomes pretty much impossible to do that. And as we'll see, the applicant originally wanted to do that, expand the structure on the first floor. But once they found out about the floodplain and floodway issues, they are now proposing to pop the top and go up instead without expanding the footprint of the structure. So as I've shown on these couple of slides, we've got the issue from a location standpoint with that the property is located in a floodplain and floodway. But in addition to that, one of the other unique physical conditions is the location of the existing structure. So this is a survey plat, and the green crosshatched areas show the required front and side setbacks. And you can see with the red outline that the current footprint of the structure is within the 5-foot side setback to the north and the 25-foot front setback to the east. In fact, it encroaches to the north approximately 3 foot 4 inches, and to the east into the front setback approximately 8 feet 8 inches. I'm not exactly sure how that happened. I do believe that the house was built in 1950. This part of town was annexed into the city in 1949. And it's hard to tell from looking at the building file exactly when all that happened. There could have been some overlap there. I do know that in that time frame, there used to be some side setbacks that were 7 on one side and 3 on the other. How it got to be 1'7" from the north property line, I do not know, but that's where it is. This is an official survey. So what the applicant is proposing, you can see here, this is a survey of the site. Here's another plan that shows essentially the same thing with the existing footprint, but you can see that there's an existing covered patio on the first floor. And then there is an existing carport. And then there is a proposed, the proposed second floor area, which would not increase the first floor footprint. You'll see in the next slide, but it basically creates a full rectangle here, and I'll show you it now. So this is what the proposed second story would look like, and they are proposing to go straight up from the existing footprint with the second story walls. I'll show you a quick front elevation showing the view from the front with the one-story carport with the deck above, the second story addition, and of course the gable roof. I mentioned it would encroach less than 1 foot into the bulk plane on the north side. And then I also wanted to show a north elevation, which doesn't really show all that much, other than the thing to take note of is that there are no windows that on the addition that would face the north side. And that is in response to a building division comment. As you get closer to a property line, you are limited in the amount of openings you can have for fire code purposes. It's perfectly fine to do that. You could build to a 0 lot line, but provided that you had the correct fire ratings as well as lack of openings or no openings. So to just get into the criteria, in terms of the first criterion, as far as unique physical conditions, the unique physical conditions on this property are its location in the 100-year floodplain and floodway. And that's also a topographic unique physical condition, as well as the location of the existing house on the property. This deprives them of being able to expand horizontally. They can really only go up, and even so, they have to get a floodplain development permit and will have to prove a no-rise certification to the Public Works Department. So that is a unique condition. In terms of the second criterion, I want to go back to the first. One of the other hardships is there's also, if you don't stack the walls, meaning go straight up, There are some structural issues and even potentially some sort of symmetry issues, but it creates some structural issues as well as some space issues if they have to come inward with that proposed second story, and so there's some issues there. In terms of the second criterion, this would not create any public health, safety, or welfare issues. As far as the third criterion, it will not be affecting the essential character of the neighborhood. It is not going beyond any of the existing setbacks. It's not encroaching any further, and the applicant does have neighbor notification forms from both the north and south property owners. Lastly, in terms of a self-imposed difficulty, this is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship. This owner hasn't had the property very long. This condition existed. In fact, the property owner didn't even know about the floodplain issue prior to applying for this building permit. So with that, I guess I would summarize this with the Community Development Department recommends that this variance request be granted, or variance requests be granted for the reasons I've stated. So I'd be happy to answer any questions with that.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. What questions do we have for staff?
I was confused by a couple of the different image. The survey image shows the carport not extending into the 5-foot setback on the south, but then the existing, I guess the existing site plan does show it in that area.
That could be, I see what you're talking about. You've got the survey plat here with the carport not extending in, and then you've got the existing plat presumably showing that it is extending in.
Yeah.
I think we can ask the applicant that as they come up for their presentation. That thank you for noticing that. I did not notice that. That could be a drafting error. My sense was that the existing carport posts were going to remain in the same location. And there are some other exhibits that I did not show that are in the packet. And I could bring those up if you want to. I've got some photographs if you'd like to see any. Let me try and pull one up here if I have a photograph from the front. I do. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, and it's hard to tell, but it does seem like the intention was to utilize the structural components from the carport. But I'll let the applicant answer that particular question as when they come up. I do think the applicant is raising, or I believe the architect is raising her hand.
Yeah, we'll get to her, Mr. Bell.
Okay.
We can get her sworn in.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll harass you to complete
Sure.
this first.
Please do.
So one question I did have
Yep.
kind of that same point on the carport is I know in the last case, we mentioned that a carport's considered an accessory structure that's kind of separate and doesn't have the same rules. Does adding that attached deck on top of that change that classification at all?
No, it doesn't. It's got a maximum height of you know, you can only go up to 16 feet. There would be actually a 5-foot required setback. So I think it's going to get down to whether it's set back 5 feet or not. But no, I don't think that makes any difference.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Bell, I have a general question. So before we've talked about a drainage pathway that was put into, I believe it was box culverts. And that is not this is still all overland flow to have this flooding, correct?
Yeah, I think, are you referring to a study and proposed solutions to help out with this floodway and floodplain area that was done, oh gosh, 2017, 18?
I think that might be. I know that there was some indication that they were gonna underground some of it.
Yeah, that, to my knowledge, none of that has been done. And so, yeah, this is overland flow, and certainly even, you know, even looking at it, you know, you would not think that it flows through there. This is something that's relatively new within the city. But no, it is overland flow. That is correct. And you can see, you know, the impact is fairly wide. These green lines represent the actual floodway, as opposed to the larger yellow area is the floodplain. So clearly, if somebody wants to expand, there's little to do but go up.
I did have one other question, just because I know in looking through this, I see new carport / deck mentioned multiple times. If they were to redo that carport, would there be restrictions then on the potential? I mean, just based off, you said it couldn't increase the flood level at all.
Well, so no matter what, that's a great question. They have to get a floodplain development permit from Public Works, and they're gonna have to hire an engineer with a specialty in floodplain, and they will look at the situation and offer them options. I think the question that's really before the board tonight. So, for instance, it looks like there's maybe multiple posts on this sort of left-hand side of this photo that are holding up this carport. Yeah, the Public Works Department could say, you know, don't do anything more than that. They could say, oh, you're okay to do 2 posts that are a little bigger. And that all has to do with their floodplain development permit, and they're going to make sure that they meet the city's floodplain code. But the question really before the board is more about the setback decisions, because we'll hear from the applicant on whether or not the new deck that's going to be on top of the carport will encroach into the 5 feet. I would think not, because that would be another variance request that hasn't been requested here yet tonight. But the real question before the board doesn't have as much to do about what they can do or not do in the floodplain, which is clearly limited, and has been stated as such by the Public Works Department. But it's more whether or not they can encroach into this north side setback and the front or east setback, and continue to build straight up from there, as opposed to trying to come in to the required setback lines. The floodplain development permit, which will, again, they'll have to hire a consultant, that will be its own thing. And so that could have its own challenges, but this is an easier question. But in my experience, and I'm not an engineer, but in my experience, they're not going to say, yeah, go ahead and expand this footprint for your addition. So does that answer your question, or?
Yep, that does. Thank you.
Okay.
Does the board have any other questions for Mr. Bell at this point? All right, Mr. Bell, I think we're through with you for the time being. If the applicant could please come forward to testify in the case, please state your name and address to the secretary who will administer the oath.
Good evening, Kelley Thompson, 3021 South Corona Street, Englewood, Colorado, 80113.
And Jennifer, if you want to go ahead and unmute, I'll swear you in as well.
Thank you.
Yep, Ms. Culberson, if you could state your name and address, and then.
Yes, it's Jennifer. Actually, my name is Jennifer Culberson Roberts, and my address is 1683 East Maryland Avenue, Phoenix, Arizona, 85016.
Okay, if you can raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so Mr. Bell has presented it, and we do have the packet that came along with everything in it. So what else can you add before we start peppering you with questions?
If you don't mind, Kelley, I'd like to go first.
Please, by all means, yeah.
First of all, Brooke, thank you very much. I thought that was a very thorough and accurate explanation of what we're looking to seek here. Matt did notice an error on my behalf. The carport is not intended to be in the setback at all. That's not a request that we're making. It's our understanding that we will be allowed to reconstruct the carport, not expanding any of the footprint. So the existing columns that are there will remain in size, potentially become a steel as opposed to wood to support the deck without taking up additional footprint and creating any potential additional displacement for within the floodway. So I just want to clarify that we're really only seeking to be in the setback on the north and the east side, the front and the side setbacks, so that we can basically just maximize our structural efficiency and build up vertically on the existing first floor walls.
Could you talk a little bit about why you couldn't just shift the whole thing to the south somewhat? Because I know that there was some structural conversation about you have an existing wall there, but the problems that would cause if we don't allow a setback to the north, and then you have to move that back for 3 feet.
Yeah, sure. So the space, as you can see right now, is on the exterior of the building, just over 1,000 square feet. So she's needs to have a pretty efficient floor plan to begin with. And if we start introducing structural columns within that first floor volume, it really affects the efficiency of what she currently has. Right now, the proposed plan that we have, the stairwell will actually go along that north wall, which would allow it to be a solid wall. We treat that with all the necessary fire code applications so that we're not having any issues with our adjacent neighbor. I think just understanding that if we're able to build a load-bearing wall on an existing load-bearing wall, that's a structural efficiency as well as a floor plan efficiency. I mean, I'm not dealing with a 5,000 square foot home where losing, 3 feet by 20 feet is a big deal. that's a substantial portion of this home. The space that we're looking to capture over the covered carport or the patio on what is the northwest corner, that's substantial for us to be able to, in order for my client to spend money in a reasonable way, in order for her to go up and have it be efficient, she needs to be able to maximize her footprint. And capturing the entire first floor as well as that patio will really help to make her effort worthwhile.
So can you talk to why she couldn't just cantilever to the south 5 feet instead of going into the setback to the north?
The reason why she's cantilevering to the south is because we can't capture that first floor footprint because we're not allowed to increase our water displacement area.
Right, but I think you could move the south. I understand that they're cantilevering over the back patio. Is that correct? In
We'd be
claiming that?
cantilevering over the south patio. There are columns at the northwest patio that would support the second floor structure.
Okay, so you could, so you're saying to cantilever an additional 5 feet to the south, you would have to add additional columns, which in
Well, I'm
essence would
saying if we're
displace
not
the
able,
water.
if we're not able to capture the north setback, if we're not able to capture that perimeter wall, that means that we then have to build her second story, then has to be set back 3.5 feet from the face of that wall. So I'm losing space that way. Whereas when I cantilever to the south, I'm gaining space. I don't have an option to cantilever to the north.
I understand that, but you're cantilevering to the south. Why can't you cantilever an additional 3.5 feet to the south rather than the north?
You're saying capture that
Additional space, like
south?
shift the whole thing to the south.
Yeah, sure. I could, architecturally and aesthetically, I think that that's not the, again, I'll use the word efficient solution. It would then create like an interior structure within her home that the second floor story would be bearing on. It wouldn't be bearing on that north wall. We would have to then have structure on the interior of the first floor that would support that north wall that's not bearing on the first floor wall. So while I understand what you're saying about how I can just capture more further to the south, it's also about then that second story north wall still has to be built and exists somewhere.
So you're saying structurally, that presents an issue that you'd have to shift a load-bearing wall somewhere on the first floor also.
Correct, to support that second story load-bearing wall and then the roof.
Any other questions right now for the architect or the owner from the board? And then I have one additional, if no one else. Can you go over the bulk plane? Why you need that foot for the bulk plane?
To be very honest with you, when you're looking at my East Street and my West Street, in fact, all of the elevations, I'm not showing that the vertical walls are encroaching above that 18.7 foot bulk plane max height.
That's what I was curious about. I couldn't find where that.
I couldn't find it either, and it wasn't a request that we had made, but I noticed that it was mentioned for the meeting, and and Brooke brought it up too, but I wasn't aware of that. And based upon what I'm showing, I don't think that we're going to need that wall to extend beyond 18.7 feet. I mean, we're very close to it, because another caveat that I'm not sure if you're aware of or not, but any second story that this owner adds is going to have to be 1 foot above the bulk, or above the 100-year floodplain limit. So that's 8 feet. So then she has to go up 9 to 9 feet. So anything that's cantilevering over at that patio on the south side and her carport, all of the bottom of those structures now have to be 1 foot above the floodplain. So that's where that second story height is being driven from, because we're dealing with a vertical datum that we don't have control over.
Okay, so and we'll circle back with Mr. Bell, but you're telling us that you do not need to encroach approximately 1 foot vertically into the required bulk plane to add a proposed second story.
Based upon my very initial understandings of this, no, I did not think no, that's correct.
Okay. So, and we'll circle back to Mr. Bell.
Yeah, perhaps I misunderstood something, and based upon my elevations.
Okay. Board, any other questions for the applicant and the architect? All right, I think we will let you guys off the hook for the time being. We might come back depending on bulk plane stuff. Shelley, are there any people, well, I know there's people, to speak in favor or opposition of this request?
Miss McNeil, would you like to?
Yes, I would. Can you hear me?
We can. If you can state your name and address, I'll swear you in.
Sure. My name is Christy McNeil, 2865 South Ogden Street, Englewood, Colorado, 80113.
And do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury to tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Definitely. I do.
Hi, Miss McNeil. So you've heard everything. Could you state if you're in favor or opposition, and I guess your reasoning why?
Yeah. So let's see. The first thing I want to say is this has been so interesting, because this is my first adjustments board I'm sitting in on. And so thank you guys all for doing this. This is important work, and I appreciate that there are people who are giving of their time to do this. And the second thing I would say was, I also own a property 1 block away on Corona. And so when I saw the sign, my first reaction was, no, because just it seemed like a large proportion of the setbacks were being changed. Then I also spent time walking around, looking at it, and knowing Englewood, and that sometimes these things have been, houses have been added on to over the years, and not necessarily everything conforms. So that was, I think, probably my main question in sitting in on this was, number one is not in theory, on premise, like I don't like the idea of encroaching into green spaces or the borders between houses, just because I think that's something that's really important about Englewood, and I really appreciate about it. However, I also understand, and what I was waiting to hear was, is this where the house already is? And that's exactly what it is. Like, this is what she inherited. This is where it is. And so my concern, so given that, I don't have a problem with it, because I can see that that's, you have to work with what you're given, I think. And it seems to me like that front portion, it looks, when you look at the house, it almost looks like that was an add-on at some point. And but there it is, and so I guess the only thing I would be concerned about is just wanting to make sure that this variance is is unique to the fact that these conditions already exist, not someone who wants to take over a lot, demolish a house and build to the, you know, push the limits. So that was my concern, because those are the details you don't get just from the board. The sign that's in front of her, in front of the property. So there we go. I guess that's my thought is, I guess that, you know, that given that she's working with the parameters that are already there, that this is what she's inherited. I don't see it as an issue, but that in keeping with Englewood, like I would hate to see this be considered a precedent that goes with demolishing houses and putting in brand new big things that push up the cost of living in Englewood. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Oh, there you go.
Mr. Finn, you're
Sorry,
on.
I was muted. And it was really intelligent that the comments I was adding. Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that this variance runs with that house. If she suddenly says, I want to bulldoze the house, then she can't encroach. That becomes a different issue.
Right.
So and thank you so much for taking time out and appearing in front of us. And I'd encourage you to join a board. We have openings, I think.
Yeah, I got 3 kiddos still in Englewood schools and running to basketball and baseball and track. And so, but the day may come when I have a little more free time.
Perfect. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Good night.
Shelley.
There's no one else.
All right.
Yep.
And just for the record, I believe her reaction was no with multiple O's behind it. Her first reaction when she saw the board. Staff, Mr. Bell.
Yes, I'm here.
Bulk plane. What do we know about the bulk plane request?
So in terms of the bulk plane, we've got a couple of things that I looked at. And I think at the end of the day, if the board wants to make a condition and just, you know, not approve that portion of it, that's fine. But, and this was a little late in the game, so I apologize. But so I'm going to share my screen and just kind of show you where some of my thoughts were with that. Let's see if I can get the right one. Okay. All right. So it is true that this diagram shows potentially the bulk plane in the R1C is 17 feet, which would mean you'd go up, well, you would go up from a base plane, which this isn't necessarily called out. If everyone can see my screen, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so the way the bulk plane would work is you establish a base plane, which is typically lower than the finished floor of the house. And then you go up 17 feet and then in at a 45-degree angle. Hence, what the architect drew here was 17 feet plus 1'7" equaling 18.7 feet. But when I looked at this, I thought, well, the base plane would not likely be, it would not likely be the finished floor of the house. It would be lower because it would be the average of the 2 existing grades at the side property lines. And so I looked at the survey plat, and even though they're typically, when you apply for a building permit, you're going to have midpoint elevations on the north and south side of the property. You're going to take the average of those 2, that creates your base plane elevation, and then you go up 17 feet from there. We didn't have those in this particular survey. So what I did instead, and this is a little bit of speculation, is took the grades at the front and rear of the property on each side and interpolated between the two of them to create a midpoint. I did that on the south side as well, and then averaged those two and got a grade that was potentially 99, and figured that the finished floor was 100. And so I thought you could potentially be a foot into the bulk plane. And so I included that in the variance. I think if the architect and the applicant wants to weigh in on that, that'd be great. But if the board didn't want to grant that, I'm sure it can be. I just wanted to make sure we included everything. That would be a very minor thing in terms of an encroachment of a foot or less, but I did want to sort of make note of that.
So, so the Inglewood code for the bulk plane for this house is 17 feet. Is that correct?
That's correct.
It starts there, 45-degree angle.
Correct. And, you know, a 45-degree angle being an isosceles triangle, for every foot you go up or every foot you go in, you go a foot up. So hence the 18.7. I just think that 17 feet probably needed to be measured from a little bit lower. It's a very flat site. So I don't think it's a huge issue. I just wanted to cover the bases.
Does the board have any other questions for Mr. Bell?
I do have a question for Mr. Bell, if you don't mind.
Oh, absolutely.
So the bulk plane elevation at grade has nothing to do with the floodplain elevation, which is from what the applicant had said, it was a foot over what is currently what I guess would be the bulk plane, correct?
I'm having a little hard time actually with my mouse right now. Can you still see the diagram?
Yes.
Okay. I'll let the applicant speak to that, but I think I'm hoping that the survey plat and and I'm having a hard time switching between drawings. I clicked on something. All right, let's try that. The 100-year. So you can see there are these red lines are base flood elevations. Again, I am not an engineer. These are base flood elevations, and the architect referred to, you know, needing to be a certain amount above a base flood elevation, which is so you've got these elevations, and then you've got a survey plat, which by virtue of the fact that they're giving grades, you know, hopefully they're on the same datum. Okay, and all that will shake out when they do the floodplain development permit. And so, given that, what the architect I think was referring to is that any cantilever needs to be above the base flood elevation. So I guess I don't really have any comment on that. It will, things will need to be more detailed as this moves forward with a floodplain development permit.
I did have one additional question as well for Mr. Bell. Specific to the third criterion around kind of the essential character of the neighborhood. Do we know how many other second-story houses we have in that general area just because of the total amount of square footage that will be within the setbacks on that second floor?
I do not have the answer to that.
Okay.
I do know that the ability to have a second story in that neighborhood is throughout.
Yep.
In fact, as you can see by this particular diagram, even though there is a second story addition, it's way under the 32-foot maximum height. And it actually, while it does encroach somewhat into the north setback, it's pretty respectful of that other setback, and it's not taking up the entire lot or anything like that. It's not maxing out the lot coverage. It's one could build a brand new house a lot larger, put it that way.
Yep, that makes sense. I was just more so thinking neighborhood feel with the amount of square footage on a second floor within that setback area. So thank you. Sheriff Finn, I believe you're muted again.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Bell? All right, I think, Mr. Bell, we are done with you again for the time being, and perhaps for this case, if we could have the applicant and architect back. And if you guys remember, you're still under oath. And I would just like to kind of revisit this bulk plane for the simple sake that if we don't need a variance, I feel like we should not be granting one. Is it your opinion that we are under the bulk plane? It shows that that's 18.7. It looks like the wall is underneath. Quick and dirty calculations seem that the elevation is probably around 99 feet. And then if we add a foot for the floor, that would get us to only like 117. So I'm not calling into question your architectural ability. I'm just ensuring that we don't need to grant that variance in your opinion.
Actually, I would like to take this time to reverse my opinion. I'm trying to go back through my notes and your municipal code. For some reason, I thought 18.7 feet was the bulk plane height.
I think that's, yeah, I think it's, so it's 17 foot on the edge. And then you were going over a foot.
Coming over and go up.
And that's why we're getting then the 18.7. Yeah.
So I would rather err on the side of caution and not have to come back and do this again with everyone. So if we are marginally at that bulk plane height, I would like to request that we seek that variance as well.
Okay.
I don't see how that minimal height difference would have really any effect. Primarily, I know the owner's concern is with her adjacent neighbor to the north, and I would encourage that we seek all of the variances that have been presented.
Okay, and the board will discuss that, but your drawing shows that you're under the bulk plane at this point. You're on mute.
Yes, I see that thing.
All right. Okay, thank you. Any questions for the applicant and architect at this point? All right, any other questions for the board? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. I need a motion and a second, please.
I'll move to approve variances for the property at 3021 South Corona Street to encroach 3 feet and 4 inches into the required 5-foot minimum side setback, and to encroach 8 feet and 8 inches into the required 25-foot front setback, and to encroach 1 foot vertically into the required bulk plane for a second story addition. This is a variance to table 16-6-1.1 and section 16-6-1G of the Englewood Municipal Code.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. Discussion, thoughts? This one's a little bit more in depth than the first one. What do we think?
Just from what I'm seeing, obviously, utilizing the existing footprint because they can't expand. Just, stating what was already stated, the only way they can go is up. I think in order to maximize that space and to keep it within the parameters of the look of the neighborhood, I think it's a good plan.
This is a very unique physical condition of the presence of
Yeah.
both floodplain and the floodway, and really with the elevation piece as well. Like it plays into that as well, not just horizontally, but we have some vertical dimensionality to that physical condition as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, she did not build the house in its present location. So we've been down this road before, keeping the sight lines. Yeah, my I guess one thing is I keep going back to the bulk plane, and I realize it's only a foot, but I'm not inclined to grant variances that are not needed, because then they could be taken. So I mean, what do you guys think about that?
I can actually, that's one of the questions I was asking Mr. Bell, is that does the bulk plane start at the floodplain? Because it was actually, what's the best way to put it? By the applicant stated that they needed to start their construction a foot over what would be the existing elevation in order to comply with the floodplain.
Yeah, so the second floor has to be a foot above, or has to be what was it? It was a foot above. Yeah, 8+1. So that's how they get that. The bulk plane is derived from looking, and this is where Brooke was talking about, is derived from looking at the elevations of the lot. And usually what it is it's a center line, a middle of the lot elevation, which we don't have. So what he did was he took the 2-point elevations, averaged them, took the 2-point bottom point elevations on the corners, averaged them. And then if you average those two together, you get 99 feet. I got a little over 99 feet. So if we're using that, and then I think Mr. Bell added a foot just for floor height, so then we're at 100. So the bulk plane would be 17 feet, and it sits on the property line, goes up 17 feet, and then goes 45 over. And that's where we're getting the 18.7, I believe.
And my thoughts are very similar to yours, Chair Finn. It sounds like that specific variance is kind of like a we might need it thing, which it doesn't sound like. If we know we need it, it makes sense to pass it that specific piece. But if we're not sure, I think I'm not comfortable saying yes until we have the information to say, yes, this is actually needed for sure.
Correct. And that's kind of my thought, for the simple sake that, Inglewood is, and we had the one person come forward and speak tonight. Inglewood is watching everything that gets done. And I guess it's one of the things that I just, again, if it's not needed, I don't know why we'd grant it. But Mr. Taylor, you always have insight.
I mean, I think for me, it's that there is a physical condition here that is requiring us to go up a bit. And it is just a foot. Like it's one of those things where I think just in order to make sure they are able to build outside the floodway, and above that base flood elevation, just to make sure that that leeway is there. But I'd be open to, if we need to split these up into separate votes, separate motions. I could see
and maybe
how we might need to do that.
Maybe that's the approach. I mean, I understand it's just a foot, but it's just a foot when you're 3 feet away from the property line is a lot. And that's the only concern is that it appears they don't need it. If they do need it, they would come back, and they can always come back. And it would be probably a quicker discussion. I hate to, but so I guess we should probably divide up. So if we want to amend the first, if we want to do an amendment to the first motion.
Yeah, we can amend the first motion. So we would take out the piece that is and to encroach 1 foot vertically into the required bulk plane.
Correct. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
All right, we have a second. So we'll do a vote to amend the motion. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? No one's opposed. So on the floor sitting the first motion, which is variances to a variance to encroach approximately 3 feet 4 inches into the required 5 foot minimum side setback, and to encroach approximately 8 feet 8 inches into the required 25 foot front setback. To add a proposed second story addition for property in the 1 R1C zone district. That's the motion we have on the floor. Should we just vote on it, or we're going to discuss that at all?
I think our discussion has included at least these first two for now, and then we can take up
Okay.
a second motion.
So we'll and we should vote on this motion, and then we'll take up the second one, correct? Yep. All right. Ms. Work, let's vote on this first motion. You're on mute. You caught it from me.
I did. Mr. Thompson?
I am in support of, sorry, let me look up for variance VAR2023-002. I'm in favor.
Mr. Rieger?
I believe the first criterion has been met, that unique physical condition exists due to the existing structure being located within the north and east setbacks, as well as being located within the floodplain and the floodway. This has limited the opportunity for horizontal expansion, and based off of what's been presented and the expansion going vertical, I think it meets the criteria.
Mr. Taylor?
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Mr. Collins?
Yes, for the reason stated.
Chair Finn?
I voted yes for the reason stated, and for the first criterion that was discussed. The second one is, I believe the variance is consistent with the intent of the zone district regulations. The third criteria was also met. The variance will not permanently impair the use or development of adjacent properties. And the fourth criterion was met, that the variance is not a self-imposed difficulty or hardship. So for those reasons, plus prior discussed, I voted yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
All right, so now we need a motion for the bulk plane. And a second, please.
I'll move to approve a variance for the property at 3021 South Corona Street to encroach 1 foot vertically into the required bulk plane for a second story addition.
Is there a second? Is there a second for the motion?
A second.
We have a second. All right, discussion. So this motion is just the 1 foot to give a 1 foot variance of the bulk plane. I think we've already discussed it. I don't know if we want to discuss it anymore. Any other closing thoughts before we vote?
I mean, my only closing thought would be, I think if there was a lot of assumptions that were made to get to that, is if we had the actual measurements that we could say, hey, I can look at this and say, here's the exact math on where we need to be for this to work, I'd be comfortable. But since we're not there right now, I'm not comfortable in this current state.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that it's only a foot and it would be kind of covering a little CYA, depending on it, if something's off, but I do feel like we should only grant variances that are needed. And from what's presented, I don't understand how it's needed at this point with what was put in front of us. Any other discussion? All right, so we'll vote and figure out how it falls. Ms. Swarrick, if you could take the roll, vote, please.
Mr. Taylor,
I voted no. I don't believe that the criterion exists, that it's consistent with the intent of the zone district. The bulk plane has been added there for a reason, and if this truly can be built as it's drawn on the elevations, then it can still be built within that bulk plane.
Mr. Thompson,
I vote no, actually, for the reason stated.
Mr. Rieger,
I voted no for the reason stated.
Mr. Collins,
Voted no for the reason stated.
Chair Finn.
I also voted no for the reasons stated. Just we don't have the information that shows it's needed at this time.
Motion fails, 0-5.
All right, so the case VAR 2023-002 is now closed. Staff, Mr. Bell, nice living room. I like what you've done to the place.
Thank you. We just got a historic designation on it.
I'm afraid now you can't do anything to it, so you're stuck with it.
No, this is not my house. Or my office.
I'm not one to judge, Brooke. I know that, you know, staff gets paid a lot of money because of all the fuss we put you through. So do we have anything coming up?
Yes, I believe we do have a variance next month for an extension.
Okay.
Oh,
Is that correct?
we have 2 variances. Ryan's got one as well.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're back to double dipping a little.
We're getting ganged up on.
I know. Anything else from staff?
No, no, not for now.
All right. City attorney, anything? Do we have the city attorney still, or?
We do. He's coming up.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, it threw me out and then threw me back in.
No worries. Anything for the board?
Nothing from the city attorney's office.
All right. Board's choice. We got nothing. I got nothing.
I'll just note that the Unified Development Code work has been pretty active lately. So
I've seen some of that.
Look. Feel free to take a look at the drafts are all up on the Engaged Inglewood page. So
awesome.
I know there's lots of feedback we have on little things like those 3-foot, 7-foot side setbacks that still appear, and how maybe some of those things can no longer require variance if we comment on that kind of stuff. Or if you've got any thoughts on the criteria, now is the time.
Perfect. I would encourage everyone to just take a look, maybe attend one of the meetings. I've heard they need people to show up from time to time. I've heard it's quite the talk I see on the social site. Again, I want to thank everyone. Mr. Collins, is this your first meeting? I don't remember.
Yes, it is.
Nice. Do you want to give a
Yeah.
quick spiel? Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, of course, thank you.
Yeah, let's.
Matt Collins, my background over the last few years has been data analytics. Prior to that, in law enforcement for a short stint. Prior to being on this board, I was on the Code Enforcement Advisory Committee for 3 or 4 years ago, and ended up resigning from that because I was pursuing my master's at the same time and ran into some conflicts there. Looking forward to working with the board. I did mention to Shelley that I will not be able to attend the next meeting due to a pre-planned vacation, however.
Nice. Anywhere fun?
Yeah,
You
we're
have
going
to,
to
you
the
have to tell
Maldives.
us now.
We're
It's
going to
board
the Maldives
business.
for 2
Oh,
weeks.
nice.
We're gonna do a live aboard, one of the aggressor live aboard scuba trips for a week, and then
Ooh,
go do an
nice.
all-inclusive for like 2 days after that.
Very nice. Well, welcome. I
Thank
think, I'm very proud of the work this board does. I think we have great people. We're a little bit lax with I encourage the board people. I don't need you to raise your hand to speak up, just jump in. I appreciate you had great input tonight. Thank you so much. Again, I think it's probably the best board out there. So welcome to the light side from the dark side.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Nice. All right, I think that's it. We'll adjourn and we will see everyone in a month, except for Matt, and he's diving. So thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.